Swamiji's birthday was actually on Friday, so we have celebrating quite close by. Usually, sometimes you get big gap. Namashri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suryaye Sachit Sukhaswarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. Salutations to that king of renouncers and controller of passions, the sage Vivekananda, who is Satchidananda, existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute itself, the spiritual preceptor and the remover of distress. Today the panel discussion was Swami Vivekananda, the spiritual traveler. So I also chose the topic as Swami Vivekananda, the wandering monk. It's a big part in his life, as we already heard. Pravrajika, that is wandering from place to place, depending completely on God, with no possession at all, eating whatever food obtained by begging from door to door. And there's a particular word for that. It's called madhukari, like the bee collecting honey from different flowers. The wandering monk collects fruit from different homes so that nobody is put into difficulty. And that's a normal practice for monks in India. Unlike the Christian, I don't know about Buddhist monastics, Christian monastics, I understand they are paid. In one of our interfaith meeting, women's interfaith meeting, one of the Christian minister, she is an Anglican minister, she asked me, do you get paid? Do you get salary? I said, no, we are beggars. We are beggars. We depend upon other people's charity. The only exception, in the early days when they were wandering from place to place, the only exception is during the rainy season when they stayed in one place because they could not travel. There's a proverb which says that a wandering monk and flowing water do not become dirty. A wandering monk remains unattached because he is not staying in any one place for a long time, so that there is no attachment. The great Shankaracharya is generally known as Paramahamsa Pravrajika Acharya. So Parivrajana is a way of life for the monastics. He traveled the length and breadth of India more than twice, all on foot, and re-established the Vedanta. But that was more than 1200 years ago. A little more than 130 years ago, we see the same incidents happening. This time, the young disciples of Sri Ramakrishna doing several severe austerities and spiritual disciplines in many of the places of pilgrimage throughout the country, east and west, north and south, and gaining fresh impetus for their spiritual practices as well as contributing to the places of pilgrimage. So there is a Sanskrit saying, Tirthi kurvandi tirthani. Why is a place of pilgrimage so important? Because many people have gone there on a pilgrimage. So they give their contribution and they receive from the place spiritual vibrations. Sri Ramakrishna passed away on 16th August 1886. Now, his disciples had brought him to Kasipur Garden House for treatment, for better treatment. The garden house was taken on lease. The lease was going to be expired on end of the month. So the householder disciples decided that that's enough. Now the lease can be revoked. There's no need to have it anymore. Holy Mother is living there, so what to do with Holy Mother? They decided, well, Holy Mother can go on a pilgrimage, that will be good. She will be able to get over some of her sorrow. So they organized that Holy Mother go on a pilgrimage to Vrindavan with some other lady devotees and 1 or 2 disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. And the other young disciples, they said, now you young men go back home and finish your studies, because most of them were students. And that's what they did, because there is no other choice for them, nothing else to do. There's no place to stay together, so most of them went back. But 2 of them, Senior Gopal and Tarak, they had already cut off all connections with home, they were nowhere to go. So what to do? They need some place to stay. And Sri Ramakrishna had his own plans for the young disciples. Before he passed away, when he was on the last few days, one day he told Narendra, who was already accepted as the leader of the group, I leave, showing these other young disciples, he said, I leave them in your care. Love them intensely and see that they practice spiritual disciplines even after my death. And they do not return home. So now what to do? They have all gone home. Something has to be done. So Sri Ramakrishna himself took the lead. He appeared to Surendranath Mitra, one of his close householder disciple. And when Surendra is sitting for meditation, Sri Ramakrishna appeared and asked, what are you doing? My children are wandering without any place to stay together. Do something about that. Surendra straight away went to Narendra, who was his neighbor, and told Narendra, please do something. You get a place somewhere, you can stay together, and we householders will come and spend some time. How can we spend all 24 hours with our families? You need to do something. So, and Surendra offered to bear the expense. He said, I was spending some money when Sri Ramakrishna was in Kosipu, I'll do that. I'll spend that money. That's how they found a house in Baranagar. It is a dilapidated old house, said to be haunted. So they got on very cheap rent. So some of the young disciples who had gone home, as soon as they heard that Narendra has got his place, they all came and they started living there. But never at one time, all of them stayed. Some of them will be staying in the mud, and others will be going from place to place, doing spiritual practices all over the country. Only one person stayed all through, and that is a young disciple called Shashi, who later became Swami Ramakrishnananda. Except Shashi, all of them went to the Pravrajika ideal of the Hindu monks. In the beginning, Narendra stayed most of the time at the monastery because he had the responsibility of training his brother disciples. He taught them or trained them in Eastern and Western philosophy, other religious traditions, and made sure that they do their spiritual practices. He also went out for short trips to places of pilgrimage, but always came back to Baranagar monastery. He went out to with one or another of the disciple for a short time and then came back. He wanted, these small trips were to test his own inner strength. And he wanted the other brother disciples to stand on their own feet. They were depending too much on Narendra. He said, no, that's not right. And he himself felt that he is getting too much attached to them. He is trying to break the attachment from the family, and now he is getting attached to the brother disciples. It's a golden chain. So he wanted to go away from them. Shriram, when he wanted to remain in samadhi, one day he told Sri Ramakrishna, when Sri Ramakrishna was there, I would like to remain immersed in samadhi for days together, now and then just coming down to normal consciousness, to eat a little, to keep the body going. And Sri Ramakrishna rebuked him. What a small-minded person you are. There is a state higher than samadhi. It's you who sing, O Lord, thou art all that exists. Now, Sri Ramakrishna wanted Narendra to see God in all beings and serve them in the spirit of worship. But the longing to remain immersed in samadhi was too strong. And Swamiji, by the time they already taken the monastic vows, we will say Swamiji. Swamiji tried several times to go to a mountain cave and lose himself in spiritual practices. But circumstances forced him out to give it up. Once it was the death of Balaram Basu, the close household disciple. Another time it was the illness of Surendranath Mitra, their benefactor, who soon passed away. And a third time, he was immersed in spiritual practices in a cave when he got the news that his sister committed suicide. That showed him, or brought into clear focus, the pitiable condition of women at that time. So he could not stay there. He could not immersed himself in meditation and spiritual practices. So later Swamiji says, it was as if I was thrown out from that life in caves to wander to and fro in the plains below. And his journey throughout brought him in contact with all kinds of people. As we heard already earlier, rich and poor, peasants, merchants, rulers, priests, generous people, extremely miserly people, scholars, illiterate. And these experiences helped to widen his intellectual understanding, and he saw the spiritual unity of India in spite of the diversity of race, creed, custom, and habits. And he realized that the unification of apparently disintegrated India is possible only through the spread of the ideas of Sri Ramakrishna. And to achieve that, he has to be a spiritual dynamo. He should have such spiritual power that he can transform the person with the mere touch. He wanted to achieve that. So he again went out to do tapasya. So we see first Swamiji in Benares. Benares is the holiest city in India from time immemorial. It's a spiritual capital of India. Sages and saints have been doing spiritual practices there for millions of years. There Swamiji had a wonderful experience, which he later gave the moral from that. He was walking along the road, a narrow lane with a big high wall on one side and a tank on the other, when he was followed by a group of monkeys. Those who have gone to Benares know the monkeys of Benares are very, very aggressive. Now this group of monkeys is not going to allow him to go forward. And they were coming close to him and biting him. He started walking fast. The monkeys were also going closer. He started running, and they started running, chasing him. Then suddenly he heard a monk calling out to him, "Young man, face the brute." He stopped and turned around and looked at the monkeys. And the monkeys have the habit of just imitating. So when Swamiji stopped and stared at them, they also looked back at him, but then they don't know what to do next. So they slowly backed away. Later, Swamiji gave the moral from this incident. He says, in a lecture in New York, he said, "This is the lesson for all life. Face the terrible, face it boldly. Like the monkeys, the hardships of life fall back when we cease to flee from them." Interestingly, last week in the Sydney Morning Herald, I read a small item similar to this. Some research, somebody has done a research, it shows that if you look straight at the seagull, there is less chance of them coming and picking your food or potato chips. Or they either come slowly, come forward very slowly, or even back away. So just like the story of the monkeys. So to continue Swamiji's words, if we are ever to gain freedom, it must be by conquering nature, never by running away. Cowards never win victories. We have to fight fear and troubles and ignorance if we expect them to flee before us. So these travels gave Swamiji a clearer picture of his motherland. He gained the conviction that religion is the backbone of India. And again, religion is not the cause of the downfall of India, as many of the reformers at that time were saying. And he found that as long as India clung to her religious ideals, the country enjoyed material prosperity. But when people were barred from the true knowledge of religion, and society suffered. So the cause of the downfall of the country is ignorance and non-practice of the religious ideals. So he was always thinking, learning, and teaching. And as Romerola in his book says, gradually making himself the conscience of India, its unity and its destiny. Swamiji knew that he had a mission to fulfill, entrusted to him by his master. Sri Ramakrishna once, towards the end of his life, he could not even speak. So in a way, on a piece of paper he wrote, "Naren will teach." Narendra protested, "No, I can't do any of those things." Then Sri Ramakrishna said, "Your very bones will do it. There is no escape." Again, as we heard from Ami or Vivek, Sri Ramakrishna touched Narendra and he felt as though a spiritual current entering. And after that, Narendra lost, for a short time, he's lost his consciousness, and when he opened his eyes, came back, regained consciousness, and look, Sri Ramakrishna was in tears, saying, "I have given you everything. But with this power, you will accomplish great things." And again, after he experienced the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Narendra experienced Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Sri Ramakrishna told him, "Now Mother has shown you everything. But this experience, this knowledge will be kept locked. And the key will remain with me. You have work to do. When you finish that work, then it will be opened and you will experience it again." So what was that mission? These trips in the country, up and down, gave him a clearer picture of his life's mission and also brought him in contact with people, earnest souls who are going to help him in that mission. Thus, we find Swamiji at Hathras railway station on his way to Haridwar in the foothills of the Himalayas. There he met the young station master, Sharat Chandra Gupta. He was fascinated by Swamiji and came up to him and asked. Sharat Chandra Gupta later followed Swamiji and became Swami Sadananda. So at that time, he asked Swamiji, "What can you do?" Swamiji said, I have a great mission to fulfill, and I am in despair at the smallness of my power. I have an injunction from my Guru to carry out this mission. It is nothing less than the regeneration of my motherland. Spirituality has fallen to low ebb, and starvation stalks the land. India must become dynamic and effect the conquest of the world through her spirituality. Straightaway Sharath offered himself for the cause and became his first disciple by the name Swami Sadananda. He later jokingly said, I followed a pair of devilish eyes, referring to Swamiji's eyes. When you read the description of Swamiji in the West, many people refer to his eyes. His eyes are the most prominent thing. Even our first President Mataji, Gayatriprana Mataji, she was a student of Sister Niveda's school, and she has met Swamiji once when Swamiji visited the school. But she was a young girl, 5 years old, she doesn't remember. Only thing she remembers is the eyes of Swamiji. So with this aim in mind, Swamiji took the blessings of Holy Mother and left Baranagar Monastery in 1890 on his long journey, a journey to discover the past glory and the future potential of his motherland. And at the same time, he wanted to accumulate spiritual energy to change the whole world with his touch. We don't know all the details, where he went, how he survived. All the details we don't know. We know very little. Whatever Swamiji later mentioned while conversing with other people, his friends, or in the travels, now and then, some of the other brother disciples met him by chance and spent a few days. So we get that, their description or the letters that they have written. Also some of the people who came across him have left their reminiscences. That's all, we don't know much. But he wanted to avoid detection. He didn't want to or people to know where he's traveling. So he kept on changing his name. He used the name Vividishananda, Sachidananda. So somebody may say, oh, there is a wonderful monk by name Vividishananda. We wouldn't know who it is, because the previous place he was known as Sachidananda. And he was traveling by train to Pune from Bombay to Pune, and somebody had bought a ticket for him, and he got into the carriage. There was another person, that is Balagangadhar Tilak, the great national leader. And Tilak asked, the person who brought Swamiji to put on the train, said, this is Swamiji. What's his name? He said, Swamiji said, I'm just an ordinary monk. And he stayed with Tilak for a week, but he had no idea who the monk is staying with him. Only after in the Parliament of Religion, the news came in the newspapers with a picture of Swami Vivekananda. Only then he knew, oh, this is the monk who stayed with me. So that's why he kept on changing his name. He didn't want people to know. As Romain describes, alone, without a companion, without a name, staff and bowl in hand, as an unknown beggar, he was swallowed up for years in the immensity of India. Then we find Swamiji at Kagri Ghat, 14 miles below Almora on the Himalayas, seated under a peepal tree on the banks of Kosi River, deep in meditation. There Swamiji had a very wonderful experience. He says, here, one of the basic questions was resolved, and he jotted in his notebook. In the beginning was the word, etc. That is quoting from the Bible. In the beginning was the word, etc. The microcosm and macrocosm are built on the same plan. Just as the individual soul is encased in a living body, so is the universal soul in the living Prakriti, nature. The objective universe. Kali is embracing Shiva. This is not fancy. The covering of the one by the other, that is, covering of soul by nature, is analogous to the relation between an idea and the word expressing it. They are one and the same, and it is only by a mental abstraction that one can distinguish between them, between the word and the idea. Thought is impossible without words. Therefore, in the beginning was the word, etc. This dual aspect of the universal soul is eternal. So what we perceive or feel is the combination of the eternally formed and the eternally formless. Thus, here in Kakrikat, he realized that all that exists in the universe also exists in the body, and the whole universe exists in an atom. These ideas later he developed in his lectures in the West. Most of the traveling was done on foot, sometimes by train if somebody bought a ticket for him. Often he traveled through interior villages and had first-hand experience of the dire poverty of the people. Once he lived with a family of sweepers, and we looked down on them, but Swamiji saw the priceless worth and potentialities hidden in the lowest of the low. Another time, he was in Rajputana, the modern Rajasthan, traveling. In one place, for 3 days, people day and night at all times came to see him and get his blessings. He had no rest or food, no time for that. But nobody thought of that. People were coming, getting his blessings, asking him questions. Nobody bothered whether he had food, whether he had something to drink, or whether he had any rest. On the third day, after all the people had left, a cobbler came to Swamiji and said, Swamiji, I see that for 3 days you didn't have anything to eat or drink. You didn't have any rest. I can give you some food materials. Please cook yourself and eat it. Swamiji was so tired and weak that he didn't have the energy to cook, and also he was under the vow at that time not to touch fire. So he said, no, brother, you please prepare the food and give me. The man was shocked. How can a cobbler, means the low caste, untouchable, feed a sadhu? If the people or the authorities come to know, that will be the end of his life. They will kill him. He will be put to death. Swamiji said, no, you please give me, cook. So the man cooked. Though he thought that he will be, if it comes to be known, he was sure to lose his life. Doesn't matter. Out of his largeness of heart, risking his own life, he cooked food and gave it to Swamiji. Relating this incident later, Swamiji said, thousands of such large-hearted men live in lowly huts, and we despise them as low caste and untouchables. But luckily for this cobbler, he happened to be a subject of the Maharaja of Khetri. When Swamiji came to know him well, he mentioned this incident, and one day this cobbler was brought to the court, and he thought, that's the end of me. But the Raja rewarded him handsomely. Swamiji wanted to be just another nameless sannyasin among the thousands of others. But his regal appearance, his intelligence, and his spiritual powers kept him apart. He caught the attention of the scholars, the officials, the ministers, and the kings of the different states through which he passed. That's how he came to the attention of the Diwan, that's the Prime Minister of the Raja of Khetri, who introduced him to the Raja. And Raja of Khetri became a devoted disciple of Swamiji. And it was he who insisted that Swamiji take the name, assume the name Vivekananda before he boarded the ship to go to the West. Then once there, he could not change anymore because he became world famous. There is no more change, no more hiding under different names. He could not do that. So when he was moving in these circles of officials, ministers, kings, he used that opportunity to discuss with them the ways and means of regeneration of India. And again, how to spread education, and also discuss them the need of preaching the message of Vedanta throughout the world. And he was not just simply loitering and wasting his time. He used that opportunity to improve his knowledge of Sanskrit and also learned Vedas in the company of some of the greatest scholars of the land. One such scholar of the Vedas was Pandit Shankar Pandurang, the Prime Minister of Porbandar, who was at that time, Western India, who was at that time translating the Vedas. This scholar, the Shankar Pandurang, told Swamiji, Swamiji, I'm afraid you cannot do much in this country. Few will appreciate you here. You ought to go to the West, where people will understand you and your work. Surely you can give the Western people your enlightening interpretation of Hinduism. And he encouraged Swamiji to learn French so that it will become handy when he went to the West. Swamiji learned, and then he wrote a letter in French to the brother disciples in Baranagar. Suddenly one day the letter came, they have no idea what language is this, who has written, and at last Shashi, who had just a little knowledge of, had seen maybe French, had said, I think it is French. So then they took it to somebody, said one librarian, and came to know, this is French and what is written. Swamiji, even in this, though he didn't want to say where he is, still he had his bit of jokes at the expense of the brother disciples. It's in Porbandar or Junagadh that Swamiji first heard about the Parliament of Religions. From Western India, he travelled to South India through Bangalore, Trivandrum, Rameswaram, and finally Kanyakumari, the southernmost tip of India, towards the end of December 1892. Kanyakumari is famous for the temple for Divine Mother, known as Kumari, the Virgin Mother. So first, he went to the temple, offered his salutations to the mother, and then looked out and found a rock in the ocean, in the sea. He wanted to go and sit there. That rock is called as Sripada Shila. This is the rock on which Mother had meditated. The Divine Mother, the story goes that Divine Mother wanted to get Shiva as her husband, and she did penance there, standing on one foot. Even now we can see the footprint on the rock. So it's called Sripada Shila. He didn't have money to pay the boatman, so he swam across the sea and went there. sat there for 3 days and nights in meditation. So, thus he has completed his journey from the snow-capped Himalayas to the last bit of the land, the southernmost tip of the land. The end washed by the waters of the 3 seas, the Indian Ocean, the Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal meet in this spot, Kanyakumari. Seated there on the rock, he reviewed his whole experience and what he had known, the past glory of India, the present condition of the masses, crushed under tyranny of rulers, landlords and priests. He remembered that Sri Ramakrishna said many times that religion is not for empty stomach. So first we have to feed the people, only then can preach religion. And another idea Sri Ramakrishna gave him was serve man, looking upon him as God. So these are all these thoughts went through his mind. Now the mission became clear, what he is supposed to do. His mission became clear to him. He decided that he would dedicate his life to the service of God, revealed through humanity. God not just in a temple or in the mountain cave, but God present in the humanity. With that idea, later we see him saying in a letter, "May I be born again and again and suffer 1,000 miseries, that I may worship the only God in whom I believe, the sum total of all souls, and above all, my God the wicked, my God the afflicted, my God the poor of all races." Here at Kanyakumari, Swamiji became a patriot and prophet in one. And the grateful nation, India, raised a monument for the great soul, Vivekananda Rock Memorial. That's what the picture we are seeing. It's another view. It was inaugurated on 2nd September 1970. I was really fortunate to attend that function. In the morning, we had the 10th president of the Ramakrishna Mutt, Swami Vivekananda, there, and they had the home of fire. And sitting there, with the flames going up, it seems as though Swamiji's eyes are blinking, you can see. And then the opening was done by President of India. It was a big function. Then next we see Swamiji at Madras. From Kanyakumari he went to Madras, went to Pondicherry and then came to Madras. In Madras he attracted a group of young men educated in the Western system, but they had great zeal to serve their motherland. And the leader of them was a young college professor by name Alasinga Perumal. He became extremely devoted to Swamiji and became a disciple of Swamiji. And if you read the complete works of Swamiji or the letters of Swamiji, we can see that Swamiji wrote from the West more than 40 letters to Alasinga in the 3 years, inspiring Alasinga and his friends to dedicate their lives for the service of the nation, the poor, encouraging them to work for the uplift of the masses and also spread the ideals of Vedanta. So Alasinga, with the help of Swamiji, he started a magazine called Brahmavadin. And it was these young men of Madras who took the lead in sending Swamiji to America to attend the Parliament of Religions. Few years later, Miss MacLeod, one of the close friends of Swamiji, she never said she is a disciple of Swamiji, she always called herself friend of Swamiji. One day, seeing Alasinga Perumal, he said, "What a pity, Mr. Alasinga wears his caste mark on the forehead." You can see the caste mark. There's a Iyengars, South Indian Brahmins. So she made the comment, "What a pity, Alasinga has got the caste mark." And hearing that, Swamiji turned on her and said sharply, "Hands off, what have you done?" This sharp retort brought tears to her eyes. She didn't know what did she do. What is it that made Swamiji so angry? Only later she came to know what sacrifices Alasinga had done to send and keep Swamiji in America. He begged but for Alasinga, they would not have gone, West would not have got Swamiji. He begged from door to door, and later, before the Parliament of Religions, he was there and he is running out of funds, almost to the point of finishing all the funds. He sent a cable to Alasinga, asking to send some money. And Alasinga went from door to door begging for money, and his wife offered to gave all her ornaments to pawn to get money and send it to Swamiji. That's how much devotion Alasinga had for Swamiji. It's no wonder Swamiji said, "Hands off." Swamiji realized that the spiritual treasures of India could not be allowed to be destroyed if the world is to live on. If India dies, the world will starve spiritually. So he decided to appeal to the whole world. And that was the entry point to the Parliament of Religions in Chicago on 11 September 1893, when he gave the first opening address. Now we say Swamiji's wandering days are over, he was in the West, he has come to the West. But he was continuing the wandering in a different way, slightly different way in America, that's all. He was going after the Parliament of Religions, he was going from place to place giving lectures, organized by a lecture bureau. But the sad part was that lecture bureau cheated him. His plan was to get some money to help his Indian work, but that didn't work out. But he learned a great deal from his experiences. First, he saw that underneath the pomp and glamour of wealth and scientific advance, the life in the Western society is a long veil. He realized that the West needs the life-giving message of Vedanta to mitigate the spiritual starvation. So he boldly declared, "I have a message for the West," just as Buddha had a message for the East. And the gist of his message in the West was what he said mainly again and again in Thousand Island Parks: find God, nothing else matters. If you find God, you get everything. Find God, nothing else matters. As Sri Ramakrishna says, put the digit 1 and then add all the zeros, you will get a large number. You remove the 1, this only is nothing, only zeros, no value. Find God, you get everything, nothing else matters. There he realized, while in the West he realized the effectiveness of organization. But he was not sure what type of organization is best suited for the Indian character and Indian work. So he gave a lot of thoughts to that, on that subject. Thus, on his return to India, on 1st May 1897, he called a meeting of the disciples and devotees of Sri Ramakrishna at Balaram Basu's house in Calcutta, which is now called Balaram Mandir, and started the Ramakrishna Mission Association. He said, "From my travel in various countries, I have come to the conclusion that without organization, nothing great and permanent can be done." Thus, he started the Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission. Thus, to consolidate and establish his life-giving, man-making mission on a firm basis, he established the Vedanta societies in the West and the Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission in India. Now his mission is complete. As Sri Ramakrishna said, your work is over. Now the box can be unlocked. Only then he could give himself again to immerse himself in the bliss of Brahman. But can we say his work is over? His mission is over? He has started the mission, but whether his work is over, isn't it still continuing? Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission at Belur Mutt. This is the Belur Mutt picture. He said, "It may be that I shall find it good to get out of my body, to cast it off like a disused garment, but I shall not cease to work. I shall inspire men everywhere until the world shall know that it is one with God." The very fact that